Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. I am super thrilled to have you here today. We're going to dive right in and embark on a seriously fascinating journey. We'll be exploring the incredibly deep historical roots and the beautifully complex modern reality of American identity. So whether you're a total history buff or just starting to piece this huge puzzle together, stick with me. We are going to look at exactly how a wildly diverse, multicultural past forged the nation we know today. Okay, let's dive into this by posing a really provocative question. One taken straight from the sociological research of Deborah J. Schildkraut. She asks, how much there is there to American identity? Think about it. When we look closely at a country built by so many radically different peoples, is there actually a singular, defining core? Or, is the foundation itself made of something way more intricate?
To figure that out, here's our roadmap for today's explainer. We're going to cover 1. Defining American identity, 2. The first inhabitants, 3. Rise of complex societies, 4. Early European contact, and finally, 5. A multi-creedal nation.
All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, Defining American Identity. We'll be looking through the sociological lens.
This brings us to a really foundational academic concept called the multiple traditions theory. Basically, this theory argues that there's no single, easy measuring stick for Americanism. Instead, being American is defined by a broad, complex, and honestly, sometimes totally contradictory set of norms. And Schildkraut's empirical research actually backs this up. It proves that an increasingly multicultural America actively creates a multi-creedal America, meaning we literally have multiple, distinct belief systems operating all at the exact same time.
And you know what? That multi-creedal reality isn't just some modern phenomenon. It is baked right into the land itself. Get this. Today, there are 575 federally recognized indigenous tribes in the United States. 575! That staggering number is a living testament to the incredibly deep-rooted diversity of the continent. The complex identity we see in modern America, it directly mirrors the physical and historical complexity of the land's very first peoples.
Let's move to and see how this builds in Section 2, The First Inhabitants, exploring the deep roots of North America.
To really grasp the epic scale of this history, let's rewind the clock. We're starting roughly 30,000 years ago. That's when the prevailing theory suggests people migrated from Eurasia, crossing the Beringia land bridge right into present-day Alaska during the Ice Age. Fast forward to 10,000 BCE, and these Paleo-Indians were well established all across the continent. They adapted from hunting massive Ice Age megafauna, like we're talking woolly mammoths, to foraging and hunting bison. And then by 8,000 BCE, we see a massive leap in human development, the forging of the very first agricultural systems down in central Mexico.
Now, even in this incredibly early period, human settlement was absolutely not a monolith. Just look at the contrast between two distinct early groups. You've got the Clovis culture, around 9000 BCE, famous to archaeologists for their fluted Clovis spear points. But at the same time, you have the Folsom culture. They were similar in a lot of ways, but marked by their own totally unique Folsom point technology. It's a perfect visual reminder of our multiple traditions theme, starting from the literal dawn of human habitation in the Americas.
Which brings us to Section 3. Rise of complex societies, diverse civilizations and structures.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the sheer variety of how these societies organize themselves. On one hand, you've got the Mississippian culture. They were famous for massive urban earthwork mounds and a heavy reliance on sprawling agriculture and trade networks. But then, on the other hand, up in what's now upstate New York, you have the Iroquois Confederacy, formed in the mid-15th century. This was a highly advanced political alliance of 5 distinct tribes, uniquely represented by a governing body of 50 sachem chiefs. 2 totally different ways of life, sharing the same continent.
And to really wrap our heads around the scale of these early urban centers, let's take a look at the Mississippian city of Cahokia, located near modern-day St. Louis. It was centered around a colossal 100-foot-tall earthwork known as Monk's Mound. In the 12th century, Cahokia reached a peak population of an estimated 20,000 people. To put that into perspective for a second, that made this indigenous American city larger than London was at that exact same time in history. Incredible, right?
The continent's immense geographical diversity practically demanded cultural diversity. In the arid Southwest, the Anasazi built massive stone and adobe pueblos, some boasting upwards of 800 rooms. Up in the lush Pacific Northwest, life and spirituality centered entirely around the salmon harvest and communal gift-giving feasts called potlatches. Far out in the Pacific, Native Hawaiians established a distinct civilization that remained isolated until 1778.
Meanwhile, in Puerto Rico, the Taino people developed a unique society led by a single cacique chief. This land has always been highly diverse.
Moving on to Section 4, Early European Contact, a collision of worlds.
The cascading impacts of this contact were just monumental. Now, the earliest recorded European contact was actually by Norse explorers in an area they called Vinland around 1075. But the larger waves of European colonization later sparked a massive, world-altering exchange. Europeans introduced Eurasian horses, cattle, and hogs while exporting American crops like maize, potatoes, and tobacco back across the Atlantic. Tragically, though, the most impactful exchange was microscopic. Europeans brought over diseases like smallpox and measles. Lacking any natural immunity, indigenous populations were absolutely decimated by these epidemics, severely disrupting their ancient societies. And this brilliantly illustrates how the layered complexity of the continent only grew as competing European empires arrived, bringing their own varied traditions. The Spanish established themselves in Florida, the Southwest, and Puerto Rico, encountering the Taino as early as 1493. The Dutch settled the Mid-Atlantic, creating New Netherland until the British took it over in 1664. And the British, of course, took hold on the East Coast, establishing their first permanent settlement at Jamestown in 1607, and then the Pilgrims followed at Plymouth in 1620.
Finally, we arrive at Section 5, a multi-creedal nation, returning to the present.
So, what does the modern sociological data actually reveal? Well, despite this incredibly layered, turbulent, and diverse history, a surprisingly unified consensus exists today. Most Americans, regardless of their own ethnic or immigrant background, share a complex view of the norms that constitute American identity. We collectively agree that being American is not just one simple, clear-cut thing. It's a blend. This is summarized perfectly by Dr. Schildkraut, who notes, the results confirm the multiple traditions perspective, showing that a broad range of constitutive norms define being American. A complex and contradictory set of norms exist. So the crucial point is that the sweeping, incredibly diverse history we just mapped out, from 575 indigenous tribes to the collision of global empires, naturally gave birth to this exact, contradictory, multi-creedal modern reality. Which leaves us with a final, provocative question to reflect on. How does this complex, contradictory set of historical norms shape your own view of American identity today? Seriously, next time you look in the mirror or at your local community, take a second to consider how tens of thousands of years of layered human history have built the there that is there. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. I hope this structured journey through our past has sparked your curiosity to learn even more. See you next time.